Hey everybody, welcome to Druid's Table. We have not done one of these in a while, so much so that we can't remember what kind of intro we wanted to do, so here it is. Welcome. I'm Dan.
I'm Jacob.
We've got Zechariah.
Howdy.
And most importantly, not to say Zechariah is not important, he's very important, but we have him here always. He's so important, and actually, he's very excited about the topic we'll be discussing today. We have with us in studio Adam from the Inn of Planar Crossroads.
Greetings and salutations, travelers.
And today, we'll be talking about mechs in Open Legend. I'll let Jake start that conversation in a second. Just want to remind you that you can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you find podcasts. You can support us on Patreon and Locals. Supporting us not only helps us continue to create high-quality content, but you also gain access to our exclusive Discord where you can watch movies with us. Adam actually joined in this week as he's up here on our movies night. Watch The Crawling Eye. 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend. And we play games. Soon we'll be having Patreon games. I'm not sure when we'll put this up, but we are getting into Twitch, and we will have our Patreon games on Twitch. So if you're interested in being part of that, join our community, our little forest, and we have a lot of fun in there. And I think that's it. Let's let Adam give his shout-outs for what do you got going over at the Inn of Planar Crossroads?
I don't know, because I don't know when this is coming out. But
Me neither.
hopefully, the biggest thing we've been trying to do for the past month now, I guess, is get things situated for the webpage, the 𝑣IOPC.com or innofplanarcrossroads.com. Either one works. Got both addresses.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. So either one of those works. Hopefully by now, the black and white will be up, Lord willing. But hopefully the marbled universe has come in and will be behind the icons, or we'll see. And it will have a place for the support icon. It's a little bag with coins beside it, and you click it, and then it'll take you to the little blurb about how you can support us. It will have Patreon, Subscribestar, maybe locals, and also the direct pay through PayPal. So that's what we're working on mainly there.
Awesome.
That's mainly it.
Well, I'm excited about Druid's Table. And
Starting it back up.
on this episode, we are talking about Open Legend using mechs in Open Legend RPG system.
Open Legend's so good, you need to say it
I just had to say it twice.
Yeah.
that was for JP,
That was.
But so we're going to start out with, there's the classic, right? Companion feat.
Right.
But as Adam and I have discussed recently, and I didn't even think about this, doing it the other way around. Your player character is the companion, and the main stat block is your mech.
Right.
Which I thought was fantastic.
And that concludes this episode.
Yep, that's it. We're done. All right, have a good day.
Well, I think that's really good, especially if you do another thing we talked about and lock away all extraordinary abilities to the mech.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, you guys were mentioning that.
Yep.
Yeah. So for the classic, the original idea, Brick in Bomb Squad actually does this. He has companion tier 3 for his armor. And he balances what Brick's able to do between the armor and what Brick does. But it's kind of all one creature, really. It's all together, but he just splits it up between the two. The only real homebrew we do with that is that they share guard and toughness. So that he could, it gave him a little flexibility so that Brick has the guard and toughness, but it's again all one creature. So I thought I'd just throw that out. That's the only homebrew we've done. Originally we were doing some other stuff, but Zech and I actually talked about it a lot and realized everything Open Legend does with the companion feat just let us do what Brick wanted to do. Other than that, so if you're targeting guard or toughness, it's always the one. We did play a little with Resolve, since they are 2 different sentient beings in a sense. But on the flip side, I'm interested to hear what you guys came up with.
Well, I know for when I was thinking about the mech idea with Open Legend, the extraordinary abilities were left to the weapons on the mech, essentially. Or equipment, like a flying boosters or whatever it may be. because that's what fits the mech. So,
Right.
and Adam kind of seemed to agree with that when we were talking about that, because it's kind of cool to be like, oh, I'm a normal human inside of a mech who does all the crazy stuff. And then it also allows for the role-playing end, the narrative end, when you're out of your mech. Because now you still have stats for your character.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So you're able to go and do your conversations, and you still can do your, conflicts resolution through diplomacy. You know, I mean, not always think everything's fighting, right? I mean,
Yes. Well, I mean, especially with our group.
yeah, right. How many days on the dock? No.
Did we do any combat for the entire
We've gone
month?
this
of
many
shooting?
days without direct combat.
Yes. Yes.
0.
Right. But for me, in a mech game, I really like the idea of being able to target body parts. So you gotta have to homebrew a little bit there. And Adam and I were discussing, you could do something along the lines of when that part gets targeted, and you have to figure out the stats on that. You just keep the same guard, maybe, and you just call it those shots, but it is a smaller target. But that's something you'd have to flesh out. I think that each part, you could do something where it's like, oh, it's a slightly smaller target, so it's like a +2 to the guard. You could figure out, because that kind of, or +3 in this system is usually the common balancing, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I don't remember the 1 feet there, but so when you target a part, that part using that weapon or off of that arm essentially would have disadvantage. And we were talking about once you get to disadvantage 5, I think it was 5 or 3, we could choose whatever number.
You'd have to play test to kind of
Correct.
feel which one was
but that
best.
would be disabled and need to be repaired, be done. It'd have to be repaired to begin with.
It could be broken, and if it gets, if you continue to take damage on that side inadvertently, it may be absolutely ruined. It may not be salvageable. You may have to buy a new part, in which the wealth score and credits will actually play a larger role. We were discussing how those were locked away. You can do that even with things that might not come to mind. Energy obviously comes to mind for fire and flamethrowers and all that stuff. But even precognition works, because you could have a combat learning program, assisting the pilot projecting where different things will likely happen. Still work with that. And as far as the damage and the wealth stuff on it, that's where you have to decide whether you're going moderately post-scarcity, or how far in the future are you? Is it scarce are you having to salvage pieces from other mechs that get damaged, or enemy mechs that get damaged? Because that can present a lot of fun things of loot becoming not just, hey, I pick up a sword, I got a new arm, or I got a new this from this one. And oh man, if you actually let your players make a gunpla of their mech, and those were the minis you used, that could get pretty fun for people. I'm already seeing stuff turn in y'all's heads.
Like our mini painter over here is getting excited.
Yeah. Just gonna make a bunch of mechs, put them out in the field. If you destroy them, you have to actually smash them, and then you can take whatever pieces.
Oh, that opens it up for kit bashing too.
Just kit bash.
Yeah, kit bash.
Kit bash all of them
If you
together.
can fit it on, you can use its power.
Go ahead.
For the credits and the wealth level thing, if you do go post-scarcity, that means 3D printing is on the table, 3D printing stuff. Lancer, that's the thing
That's
I was
the one
trying
that
to
was
think of.
talking. Yep.
Lancer is a system that is in a post-scarcity. So every part you need to repair is 3D printed. There's other things that are now valuable. And that's why you have the ability to repair these absolutely expensive mechs. And it's actually good to look for, too, for mixing different mech styles together. So some of the alien races use a more bionoid type of mech, where others use more of a traditional mecha style. And then you can always do cyborg style mechs, where the human's wired in. And then you can actually just make a character, but then perhaps that character, that type of mech that needs more attention and support. So that's where you have this other character come in and be the play. Was it with you guys that I discussed the idea of having a character not even have a physical body before?
It doesn't ring a bell right now, but
No,
I know
don't
I
think
mentioned
so.
it on Around the Hearth sometime. If you, loyal, devoted viewers, who surely came over here from the Inn of Planar Crossroads to watch on Druid's table, you guys tell us in the comments if you remember if you do at all. What if your ship AI was actually player? Like a player is the ship character.
That's cool.
Like several sci-fi settings have done this, where there's an actual person in there. Their brain has to filter all the information out because our brains are the best computers.
Farscape, where it's like a living
There's
ship.
Farscape, where they have pilot.
Right.
There's also, like for anime, there's Outlaw Star. She's a gynoid that is, I think she's technically gynoid. I don't think she's cyborg, but she is put into the Outlaw Star to be that computer. She can get out and do things, but her biggest strength is while she's inside the machine. And that can be an option for people that don't want to play a mech pilot in a mech game. Perhaps they're feeding boons and banes. They're allowed to do boons and banes outside of the battlefield because they're in the ship, but they have no physical presence to be able to help them. They have to help the party do that stuff. That's how I think about it as somebody who likes to play support.
I'm also a support lover too, so that's awesome. I love that idea. Go ahead.
no, well, because then that brings you back to not everybody wants to play pilot. But you can have the mechanic, you can have the support person, there's a lot of different narrative ways, and that's where their skills come in. Now, if you want to stick to like the humanoid with no extraordinary abilities, you could also get, because there's item creation, you can use, that's how you get your extraordinary abilities on the mech. But that can tie into the mechanic. He's got a spanner that's electrified, essentially, right? I mean,
Right.
So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Well, and jumping back to targeting different things and having to repair too. In Open Legend, one of the easy ways to do that is the success with a twist, failure but the story progresses, would be a very easy way without having to homebrew. Yes, you get that attack off, but now your flamethrower is out of gas, or something has
Melted,
failed and repaired, or
It's very, very mech anime.
Yeah.
Like the idea, busting up parts and pieces. If your mech makes it back to the base,
You weren't doing your
you
job
were doing
right.
your job. How many limbs you just cracked your cracked screen? You should be piloting it in, just like exposed because it's just you in there holding
Yes.
this thing together.
Have you even watched Iron-Blooded Orphans? To be fair, I haven't either, but my son did, and he told me it was pretty good.
I haven't seen too many, but I'm imagining some anime character screaming and just pressing the lever to make the mech walk forward, and he's screaming as if he's the one walking.
Come on, Dan. You just explained half the mech anime out there. You're not helping yourself here.
I know.
And I love what Jacob said about having someone play the technician, and like Lloyd in Code Geass is great. He's obsessed over his machines, and he gives them personality because he cares about it. When you, the player that's being the technician, and you're like, I'm sending these things out to battle, like, you might be like, well, from a game master point of view, well, if they're not in the battle, then how are they going to be engaged? They will be engaged,
Don't screw up this roll. I have to fix that. That is my baby out there that you're piloting. You better bring her back in one piece.
Keep them in the games, keep them on comms.
Right,
Let them give
right.
boosts, do cybernetic stuff to enhance the ship from afar or whatever you need to. But the technician's level of care and investment is going to be beautiful fun.
It makes a mental mix. I want to run a game where you're kind of like Zoids. Yeah, anybody know what Zoids, the battle Zoids are? But you have...
Dan knows that one, but not the other, other in modern anime.
No, I don't know any.
your party is only operating like one mech, and you're in combat, and it's like... So it's not... it's like a battle scene, but you guys are not all in the mech. You have the one pilot.
Right.
Then you
Okay,
have,
so here it is, obligatory. Go Power Rangers.
Well, I wasn't
okay, there you
going
go.
there, but...
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, they're basically a mech.
Right.
Right.
But and that would be cool because then you can give a support role.
Right.
You can have all the different, even long range. Maybe they have artillery part of the battlefield. Who knows what it is. But there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I like the idea of shifting up the combat too. What you guys are talking about is having some people that aren't on the. If you have a map where the combat is going on, the mech is there, but then you have the ship AI, you have the mechanic and everything, and then the ship actually could attack and stuff. That would be interesting.
Starfinder tried to do this with Starfinder. Paizo tried to do this with Starfinder, I should say. It worked okay. The problem was movement in a 3D space and making that make sense for piloting and stuff like that. And the idea that everybody needs to fulfill a different role. Like, you can have some crossover, but what we did bump into is if you have too many players that can do the same role, then one of them's going to kind of float around and not know what to do. They're not going to have a role in the piloting of it. So you could go two ways if you're going to do space battles anyway. I actually recommend avoid space battles because of three-dimensional space can get tricky. So unless you want to buy all the stuff to go 3D, Zach's okay with that.
Yes, you do.
Zacharya is okay with
Jacob's not.
that. So I think it'd be fun. But if you can do it in 3D space, that's cool. Go ahead with your space battles. But there's nothing wrong with keeping mech battles on the ground and having that support.
Yeah.
And even if you want to do that whole starship type of thing in starship battles, it would function in a similar way to that joint system. And you could take what Starfinder tried to do, refine it some, and then have it work. And because it's a more open system, you're not making hard and fast rules for the piloting of this particular mecha or Gundam or suit or whatever you want to call it. You can actually say you need this many people to pilot it.
Yeah.
Because in Starfinder they had to say you need this many people, and it was that many people, period. But each mech can be different. So you may deploy with this mech this time, but if someone doesn't make it, you have to use, maybe they're locked up in sickbay or something like that after the last combat, and that's how you narratively take that person who can't make it out, and you have them waiting in sickbay. Then they have to pilot a different mech that only takes 4 people if there were 5 now.
Yeah.
And they have to they don't have to change their roles or what they accomplish, but they have an AI running the other part. They have to have a learning program running the other part, and it can allow for that modular nature. And then you can have them in a station, whether it's a rolling fortress like the first Gundam, or it's a space station, Starship Yamada style space station. Either one works for that type of deployment setup. So going out to the mission and doing it and then coming back works really good for military style incursions for games.
Yeah.
It works good with the challenge event. If you need to, like, how do I summarize all of these roles? Make it a challenge event. That challenge event represents the next, say 3 rounds of combat. And so that is going to flavor how the combat moves go. So you could have everyone on it, your pilot, your mechanic, your gunner, whatever your lists are, they all participate in the challenge event. You do that one, that sets the tone of how well you're doing as a crew for the next 3, and then you spend those next 3 rounds of combat, maneuvering things, taking shots, seeing where the hits are before you transition back in. This way you get a little bit more movement. And you're just like, okay, next time we have our team, coordinated efforts, we really need to focus on these things, and separating it out makes it a little bit more smooth than doing everybody gets a turn doing their role, and then somewhere in here we're shooting and somewhere in here we're moving. Just challenge event, everybody doing their things together, then a few rounds of just the mechanical maneuvering and shooting and such to reset where you're at.
That's not a bad idea.
interesting.
In my mind, I'm picturing some dirty tactics of like smoke screening the hub, your hub ship. The enemy fires a smoke screen. So now your navigator or your whoever your support, now they have disadvantages and stuff. You apply banes to them essentially.
Right.
So there's like different ways to target those systems too.
Yep.
Now I have a thing. I've got a controversial thing.
Uh-oh.
So,
Let me get my drink.
okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Ready for the spit take?
Ready for the spit take.
Balance is important, guys. Game Masters, balance is important.
Here we go.
There's nobody likes being in a fight that's unfair, where there's no chances of winning and the odds are stacked against you and you can't do this. But you elected a mech anime. Okay. Throw balance out the window. Scrap it. I don't care. Gone.
Have you seen Gurren Lagann? They throw literal universes around by the end of the thing.
Like shurikens. Balance is not a part of this. This is a story now about power dynamics. Your characters, I like the companion idea. I like the reverse companion idea even more, right? Yeah. Look, make a level 8 character for the mech. Give it a whole stat block. Give it personality, give it powers, give it abilities, everything. It's its own thing. And then your player characters get a level 2 character. Because that's what they deserve. That's what they are in this world.
In this world, you are level 1, 2, or 3.
Yep, that's it. That's where you cap out. There's no balance here. You don't want balance. You don't need balance. Mech storytelling is, what are you outside of that?
That is.
How do you bring meaning to your bug-like existence in a war where the scale is on this level? And when you get that moment to go from being a level 3 character with no extraordinary abilities, or maybe you got a little something like a psychic link, you got one extraordinary ability, and that's why you're a pilot. You have a couple of little meaningless points in divination. That's why you're a pilot. You're special. But now when the battle comes out, you pull out this level 8 character, and you're like, now I am a god. That is what this experience is, and you don't get it through balance. Now, Brick, we're using a mech-like kind of rule system, but that needs to be balanced because of the story we're telling.
Right.
Needs balance, and we're trying to play on that even field. But if you're trying to do something that is Gundam, Code Geass, Attack on Titan with your flesh mechs.
Oh, thank you for throwing that in.
Oh, I love that. It's so great. Neon Genesis Evangelion, especially if you're doing Neon Genesis Evangelion. Make it overpowered, make it unbalanced, and make it hopeless.
And get in the mech.
Get in the mech, Shinji. So that's my kick.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I think that works real well for the idea, especially when you have them start at 1, and the mech is still built out. Of course, the best mech, the ultimech, or whatever you want to call it. That's a hidden thing they can earn or get to, and that's a 10. But the god mech, or whatever you want to say,
Build up to it.
the grand shining mech. Oh, do a Shining Gundam style game. That's basically Gundam with fighting tournament.
Okay.
That's what it is. And they were all themed. It was absolutely ridiculous. There was the Mexican space station was a sombrero. It's
awesome.
It was so fun.
They punned that, and it was Mexican.
Mexican,
Oh,
yes,
there
that's
it is.
Mexico City. But that's really good for that big, huge power fantasy thing. Because, the pilots, depending on which Gundam you go with, the pilots aren't super extraordinary outside of like a little precog-ish type of stuff they have going on, just to be able to pilot the mechs fast. You don't even have to do that. You just roll with level 1 characters. And if you're doing like a military type setup, you're a level 1 character, and if you get promoted, you get to level 2. If you do well in the missions, you get to level 2. And this can actually motivate your players to kind of adhere to a bit of the military code with reward, not just because of roleplay, but there's actual mechanical reward for doing so.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah.
And they still cap out at like level 3, 2 or 3. 3, you do get some powers in Open Legend because it's a condensed system. So you may actually want to just refer to it as experience. You get an experience point and break it down further that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
That might be a safer way to start delineating that power scaling, because you're wanting larger power scaling. That means that at level 8, this mech is tens of levels above you because of how much experience it takes to get up there. So that mech feels super powerful when every experience counts to your ranking in the ship and your ability to go places in the ship, because your security clearance goes up when you get a promotion. You're able to access different things within the ship. You could have like a whole little hub ship that you're working with, and you're able to get access and request better materials for yourself and for your kit group. And if you want to run it where it's like little squads, your squad gets better amenities, better buffs, and they're able to enter the battle with higher morale if you have a morale system. So,
and it lets your techie feel powerful too, because when he can upgrade a system on something that's level 8, you know, that it feels grand. And if you as a bug squat, you know, person on the ground ever even paying one of these things, you know, notice it doesn't tip the tide of the battle, but like you scratched it, that feels powerful. And playing that power dynamic makes it very, very that's kind of, I think, what a lot of people are going for with it. You have to cultivate weakness or the feeling of helplessness in order to appreciate the grandness. Otherwise you just feel like you're playing characters at a big scale. Also, they have to go ahead.
No, go ahead.
They have to be a character.
Yeah.
The mech has to be, whether you're a whole character sheet or whatever, they need to have character and personality.
Right.
They have to,
and it can be like almost like a collective personality that everyone has ascribed to her.
especially if
Because
it's group run.
Yeah,
I
we
do
call
like
her.
the group run idea.
We call ships hers and
Yep.
she. Like
Yep,
I
yep.
call Astro because it's an Astro van, and I think of it as, I don't think of it as a him. It's not a him, but I say him. Go over to Astro and get this out of him or something.
Yeah.
We just do that, and people do that to personalize their stuff. What type of insignia does your squad have? What type of like, maybe it's really loose military, like either not fully post-apocalyptic, but maybe reestablishing society after a great war or something along those lines that use the mechs, and that people can't repair it as well, and it's becoming almost like 𝒵𝒂𝒆𝒂𝒔𝒕𝒆𝒂 and stuff like that, with their almost religious fervor for their knowledge and how dangerous it is, so they keep it kind of pulled back, like the Brotherhood of Steel in the first 2 Fallout games. And so you have those type of dynamics you can run with, in whether it's post-apocalyptic where they're piecing it together and kit bashing, or it's post-scarcity and they're not, and they're fighting over the things that are the resources for that non-scarcity. Because when you look at space and travel, depending on how advanced you are in your setting with your mechs, there is no limit of the resources we can access. You could siphon the gas off of Jupiter and Jupiter. You can get hydrogen material for hydrogen generators, which we could technically do today, off of Neptune, and just asteroids. The asteroid belt is huge with minerals. All the gold you'd need to run circuits, and silver you'd need to run circuits, and all that jazz that everybody fights over today. That you have access to that. There's no more scarcity of that. It's just getting it out and getting it and doing stuff with it.
Or you just go full post-apocalyptic, almost steampunky. You know what I mean? Like
Diesel punk.
diesel punk, yeah. And I love the idea of it being like you're lucky to have survived your little group of people with one mech that you have to keep running. It gets damaged, you have to repair it. You know,
Yeah, your mechanic actually has a higher social standing than someone who may even be piloting it.
Right.
Because the mechanic may be an old pilot or an ex-pilot. They got injured. He's like, man, I could still do that. Get in the Mechs, Shinji. Don't make me get in the mech. Don't make me get in the mech. I fix it and you fly it.
So there's a lot of different ways to run it. Because I don't like that overpowering, like, massive mech monster craziness. I like that, like, Well, I just sprung a hydraulic leak, and now I'm stuck in the middle of a desert wasteland trying to figure out what to do with my mech. Oh,
I mean, that makes me think about when I'm on the tractor cutting hay. I helped myself remember how to run the tractor by thinking I'm running a mech.
Yeah.
Because technically, kind of is.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a mechanical piece of equipment that I run to do stuff. But that doesn't mean I'm not
Right.
play.
I just thought I'll give a quick shout out. We did, because I think with all of what we're talking about, and it should be assumed, but doing a session 0 and talking with the players ahead of time on what they want to play. Because, like, the difference between the Mega Mechs and springing a leak and you're done.
Yeah.
So, shout out Around the Hearth. We did a whole Around the Hearth on session 0. So, check that out.
It is important to do.
Yeah, and to talk to the players, see what they want. Because I love the idea of the group thing, and with the challenge event, and also having like multiple mechs that you have personalities to, and so you're starting to actually like gotta catch them all.
Yeah.
Character sheets and stuff. And
you've got it's post scarcity, so you don't have to worry about it. So you want this piece to complete your collection.
Yeah.
So it'd be great for a collector-thon type of game where everybody's trying their squad's trying to collect all the different parts so they can mix and match. Not because there's actually any dangerous war. Like that could actually be a thing, that war's not fought and it's really dangerous. It's fought and almost watched like sport.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, the Zoids aspect.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? Because they would set up
that is Zoids, isn't it?
Yeah, because they would set up the
Basically.
battlefield, and they'd sit with their hubs outside the edge, and you'd have like the commander chatting to the Zoids, running into battle with each other. You know, so they didn't go down; they'd get picked back up by their hub, or it was like pretty much a big semi truck, glorified semi truck.
Yeah, and they'd take them back, repair them, try and see where they could
Change
fix
up
and
equipment.
upgrade,
Yeah,
see if there was permanent damage.
they'd study each other's mechs, be like, well, we're facing up against these particular
the Liger
Zoids.
is facing up against the Lupins. or
Yeah,
whatever
right.
it
And then
is.
there was the bear-looking ones, and so that would be kind of a cool way to. So there's a lot of different ways to run a mech game. You know, and that's where an open legend is wonderful because, as we've talked about tonight, there's multiple different ways to do it, even in one system.
And one way that I think is cool is you guys probably, well, maybe Zachariah has, but you two don't know much anime stuff. So, Armor Hunter Metal Link. It is a old anime in Japanese. It's not, I say old because I'm old, I guess. It's an older anime in Japanese. Didn't come over here, but I think you can find certain episodes of it on YouTube. And it is basically about this basically a player character who is getting revenge on the specific part of the military organization that tossed him and his group out and abandoned them and basically framed them for a botched operation, and he's the only one left, and he hunts the armors, which are called Zukons, I think, and they're not as big as Gundams or anything, but they're armored suits that are worn, more similar to what you would see in Starship Troopers, but not thematically the same. And he hunts them with a long-range armor-piercing rounds. But if you were doing that with a team-type setup, and they're hunting the mechs, that also could be done. Because then you do have to stat up the mechs, but hunting the mechs is also fun.
Yeah,
hunting the big beasts is also pretty.
And
fun.
I'll throw out what I've been thinking about as you guys have talked about all these different options, and I also love the team-based games, especially. That's why I love RPGs in general. But the idea that you have the group, like you were talking about, Zach, with the challenge event and the combat and everything, but you need a group to run the mechs. And having it, if you end up having multiples, that someone has to be selected as the pilot. And this would go back to where there might be some overlapping roles, that like someone always has to hop in and run it, and everybody else has to fill the roles. And maybe each person starts getting their favorite mech that they like to be the one that pilots that mech.
Nice.
And so they're going in for the straight-on combat. Everybody else has to do the challenge event and fill these roles. And so it would make you really have to work as a team, because depending on the mech, depending on the situation, who's going to best fill in these roles that you need to succeed, and then you can have character sheets for each of the mechs, and that determines like what you want, which player characters you want, because they're all the level 1, 2, 3s. How can they best support in which role?
And a way you could run them not always using the level 8 mech is say, well, it's going to drain your wealth level because it costs fuel.
Resources, yeah.
Drain their resources to say, okay, this mission, you as the GM could be like the mission command, and you send them the mission. Really works great if you theme your emails around it, or your messages, or your Discord
idea,
stuff.
yes.
Actually do an AR type setup with it, and you theme your dispensations to them and say, this is Operation, you give it a code name. And that's what your episode title is too. So you give it a code name, and then after that code name, target, all that stuff, you give it a specific write-up, and you say, this is the mission: wanted alive, wanted dead, wanted target destroy supply lines, target destroy depot, stuff like that. And then the characters then have to look at their resource count that they have and say, which mech is going to be best for this, or should we take a couple low-level mechs and do it? If we take level 8, if we take Big Bertha, she is going to drain all of our resources. We got to reserve her. So why don't we take Tweedledee and Tweedledum? Small, quick, fast, 2 people running each, and we go. Quick hit, in and out, operation done. And then that adds your credits. You get credits for your mission run. So you could do it you could even do it as like a missionary mech group. Not a missionary mech group, a mercenary mech group. Totally different mech groups.
Totally different
mech groups.
You might need one to go in first before you send the other, right?
Or after, depending what happens.
Yep.
Kind of like this mission.
You're gonna look up Jesus mech in just a minute. I know.
No.
It's already wheeling in there.
No, it's instead of Big Bertha, it's Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa. You codename all of it. Oh, you religious theme your entire military system.
Yeah.
Like the Catholic type of setup. Where's the where the bishops?
Or Cabal for Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like, it's all religious imagery.
Well, yeah. But Neon Genesis Evangelion took its own religious imagery way out there. So, I don't know.
No, I really like that. I lost what I was thinking, but that's awesome.
But yeah, being able to run the resources, keeping a credit count.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
And all of that could make it really, you do add crunch, but Open Legend's a pretty open system. Yeah. Most people don't use the wealth level anyway.
Right.
So you could just use credit scores.
Yeah, well, and I was going to even throw a shout out to JP, Great Mustache. He did the decimal sort of system to the wealth level, so certain decimals. He has a whole little thing. I'm not sure. JP, comment on this episode with the link to it, but that could be the sort of thing to give a little more crunch to it, in that if you use this mech, it's going to reduce you this many decimal points. And so I think it was 1 out of 10 for each of the wealth levels.
Bonus points if you use ASCII art for your displays on your themed emails and PDF stuff you give to players.
I love that idea.
I love ASCII art. I can't do it, but I like the crunchy kind of.
It would also work well
for
West March's style game too, because you could, whoever the GMs are, they can just send out, hey, these are the bounties that are up right now. Who's got mechs?
Bounties are up.
Actually hit it. Nice. Yeah, that would work really well.
And players have to risk. They spend credits to get it. They bid to get it. So they're bidding against other
that's cool.
Even if it's not like a West March. So they bid lower than the asked amount. So they bid a little lower, and they have to think about their cost and reward if you want to get a little more crunchy on it, and say, okay, Alpha Group is underbidding by 1,000 credits. What you gonna do? Well, we need that contract to get some good karma not real karma mechanically, but get some ins with this group. We need that. Well, we going to do it pro bono? We can't do it pro bono. We got to go something. We got to get some kind of return. We got to at least cover the fuel. What's the fuel cost? And so then they calculate the fuel cost.
Fun.
And it's like, oh, so the whole group's involved.
Right.
And I guess this goes along with all the things where we're talking about having the group run the mechs, or even having a pilot and a support group and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to do that, because I found out with the Adventure Academia that if you start the game that way, no one knows any different. If you start the game where everybody has to vote on what's happening and what it's doing, and it's a collaborative game environment, they don't know the difference that it's not that way. Because nobody except my son had played Open Legend when we started playing it for the educational math practice of it at the homeschool group where I run Adventure Academia. Well, that means they don't know any different that you don't discuss and talk about what you want to do. What is 𝒻𝑑𝒐𝒏𝒅𝒔 going to do? Is she going to heal? Is she going to heal them? Is she going to cast a spell to blind them, like See Your Sin or something like that? Is she going to do those things? What's Maximilian going to do? Is he going to do his fireball, or is he going to do this? And then they discuss it and then vote. And it works out.
Mech's only going to do one thing, so that it forces the cooperation. I definitely think whichever route you take, you have to make sure that you make the mech a character. So I would say, like, if you think about Star Wars original trilogy, I know this is like just very, very different. Like, the Millennium Falcon is a character. You care about it. It has a story. It has an arc. It has a personality. For not even being a speaking thing, you care about its longevity.
Well, when Han Solo says, "Come on, old girl, hold together," you're like, "Yeah, hold together."
So how do you make a machine a character without somebody actually playing it themselves, right? How do you make it a character?
That's really interesting. I like the idea. I'm a little more towards Jake in going post-apocalyptic rather than post-scarcity, because that having to care for it and having a breakdown and stuff does, I think, make... And then if you have the team doing that, there's going to be the people that just want to throw the mech at the problem. And the other characters, depending on how much invested, probably the mechanic or something, is like, no, I have to fix this.
Or in the post-apocalypse, you're going to have to worry about resources a lot more.
Right. And it names also. I think having
gotta
them
name
it. Now, maybe too. I guess it would depend on how you're doing it. If you had the party as a whole stat out the mech, if you had a separate character sheet for the mech, maybe the party as a group comes together. Or it depends on how you're doing it. But maybe session 0 is something you could do where it's like, okay, you have this much. It's going to be, if we're going post-apocalyptic or something like that, or a scarcity type setting, you have this much you can work with. Build a character together as a team for it. And then as you're leveling up the mech, it's you gaining more resources and being able, or tearing apart other mechs that you've beaten in battle and putting more stuff on. I think it's that investment as a group that would start to give it the personality. And there has to be, at some point, someone has to ask, well, what are we calling this thing?
And have someone draw it, commission some art, draw it out.
Well, and back to the kit bashing idea, too.
That
would take it to a
that's what I almost lost. This is an excellent way to run a mech Gaslands. Gaslands is, you basically take a hot rod car, or something of that scale, and you customize it, kit bash it around, tear it up, and bring it back together, and it makes like a little monster car truck thing for a post-apocalyptic game. But you could do that. Someone could just tear apart a CD player, put the parts back together, and they have their mech.
Love that.
You could literally destroy. I saw a guy take a phone. It's on YouTube somewhere. I saw a guy take a phone, old cell phone, take it apart, and cut things, do things, take it apart, put it back together into a dragon. He had a dragon mech. And it's his mech, type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a sculpture, but I'm saying it's a mech.
Right.
So you can do that type of game in with this type of mindset about the setting. Especially, Gundams are cool. Maybe there's Gundam pieces on there. Maybe your gun. Maybe you can't find what you're wanting, but your mechanic knows how to build it.
Oh yeah,
and
I
you
like that.
And you say,
you
okay,
need the learning or logic or whatever, or the feats.
And it takes missions to get the parts. It takes missions to get the schematic.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Bringing it back to Open Legends specifically, to like the characters
Spend
can
your
maybe the characters can level up. And again, thinking of that cap again, I do like that idea of the mortal flesh needs that cap, but they could level up certain ways, maybe by completing bounties and stuff to represent their increase in wealth level and access to resources. The mech levels up by gathering resources. So
there's no way to improve the mech without
you
doing
only get
there's no
XP
XP
points.
for it.
Yeah, you may have to be clear.
It gets
going back
XP.
to session 0, be clear about how you're doing it, but the mech doesn't get XP for destroying other mechs.
Right, it gets XP
from what you can do with whatever stuff. So you may not even need a fight, but
that's
you
really
you found a warehouse that was buried. If you're post-apocalyptic setting, you find some, old world buried thing. Well, now your mech just got an XP point because you got access to all these resources.
So you can do it where, especially in mechs, I appreciate what Lancer's done with the idea of a post-scarcity mech. It really works good for power fantasy type of setup. People want to pilot mechs. So if that's what you want to do, cool. You can do that. Post-scarcity works. But scarcity works better for tension because something's always going to be scarce. It doesn't matter if it's money or time or resources or whatever. There's always going to be scarcity.
It's too real, right?
Yeah. So, say that giving personality to something, they find a dilapidated mech stuck out in the desert sands with its pilot skeleton in it. Probably got stuck in there and died of starvation or something. It has history. They call it dusty and they bring it back, but it's going to take forever to clean it up and fix it if they do it at a slope. You tell them as the GM, yeah, you can fix Dusty up, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a year to fix her up. And you're like, well, we don't want to wait a year. Well, what do you want to do to fix her up faster? You're going to have to devote resources to do that. How much are you willing to spend? What type of credits are you willing to go for? What type of fuel do you want to do?
Who are you going to make a deal with in order to get that?
Yeah. And so it motivates them.
Finding out what you've got.
And that could bring in a character who has more social expertise stats that doesn't seem like they should be able to help with the mech, but actually they're the wheeler dealer. They find the pound.
Or the person who has to actually like someone has to actually step up and be willing to fight other people on that human scale. What's the purpose of being a fighter? Well, when I've got mechs, because someone might want to come in here and try and steal the mech.
Right?
We need someone to actually. Or to
the
keep
mech
the
guards
credit
us,
shard
but
from
who
going.
guards the mech?
Who guards the mech? I like that.
That's
a lot.
interesting.
So,
oh, that's cool.
It looks like there's a lot of different angles you can do with Open Legend and mechs.
Yeah,
It's really exciting.
we could go on forever.
Yes, we could.
Play mechs.
And let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Let us know what kind
Get in
of
the Eva.
and if you do some flesh, we didn't really cover flesh style mechs, but even flesh style mechs need resources. Just throwing that out there. They have bodily functions that need worked out. So
Quirks and weaknesses.
As we are all fathers, we know.
Yes.
we are all giant mechs with weaknesses.
we're all giant mechs that excrete different things.
Flesh mechs.
That's right. Pregnant women are just baby mechs.
All right.
There you go. That's
Clink
babies in there.
There we go. Clink and drink. Clink and drink. Thank you all for joining us on Druid's Table.
And if you made it to the end of the episode, we've got one thing to say. Congratulations.
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 They
thought it
don't
was
get
gonna
the
be-
reference, but we get the reference.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Nope.
That's okay. Shinji didn't get the reference either.
Comment below if you get the reference.
Yes.
We will see you on the next Druids table. Adam, thank you so much. One more shout out. Where can they support you?
Patreon Subscribestar, or hopefully PayPal directly, the Inn of Planar Crossroads.com.
Perfect. And we are Avenue Studios. This is Druid's Table. You can join the ever-growing forest known as Avenue Studios by joining our locals or Patreon communities. Doing so will not only help us continue to create high-quality content, but you will also gain access to our exclusive Discord where you can chat with us, watch movies, play games, and so much more. Thank you guys so much for chatting Mechs. And we will see you next time.
Good night, y'all.
Bye.